This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hi, Lance Lambert from BovedaInc.com.
Hey, Todd Shapiro from the Todd Shapiro Show. How's it going, man?
Good, buddy. You know, we're just about a week away here.
We are. My gosh. It came up so quick, right?
It came up. Are you excited for the Las Vegas MJ Biz convention?
I am excited. There's so much going on. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. Just so many different things planned, that are going to go down during the event, during the after party, all kinds of stuff. So definitely ecstatic for that. And not going to forget the event right after, which is the Emerald Cup in Northern California. We'll be heading, myself and a smaller crew will be heading straight over to after MJ Biz. So it's going to be a crazy week next week.
Yeah, Lance, a little selfishly and privately, what you got to do is make sure you send me the itinerary, text it to me, or let me have it in my email so I can make sure I plan accordingly, because there's already a bunch of different parties, and it's like, it's one of those things where a lot of networking going on, a lot at the convention, but a lot of business goes down, during the nights, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. That's when a lot of it's done. That's why I tell my team. I mean, it's great to be out there on the floor, especially to meet some of the newer people to the industry. You get a lot of investors, a lot of individuals that are in either emerging or soon-to-be legal markets. But to your point, a lot of those big deals happen after hours when people kind of loosen up and a little more conversational and ready to get business done. So it all matters.
What's Boveda's sort of intention at these shows? Is it to hit retail, or do you try and get in with the LPs to say, hey, put our two-way community control packs in every single one of your packaging because, we're going to keep that fresh and no one can complain about dry cannabis?
There you go. That's really our main goal, is to, for first and foremost, is to educate. We even talked about this before as far as the category itself. We reference as our herbal category because we're very much medical advocates in this space. Do appreciate and respect adult use as well. But just education around maintaining quality and consistency of cannabis, and all that really starts with preserving the terps. And so that's going to be a bigger part of our conversation at this year's show, is just talking about terpene preservation and making sure you're maintaining that quality goodness within the biomass before consumption by the end user. And with that, I'd say, definitely the producers, the cultivators, farmers, growers are our core audience. We do very much appreciate consumers, though. And we've talked about this before, but the Canadian consumers in specific have been very vocal in just how dry their flower is and how it's been lacking a bit of quality post-legalization. So we very much love supporting the consumer as well, and making sure that they do get that maintain that quality and consistency in their flower.
Are there certain LPs, Lance, that you work with right now? I don't even know if we've ever talked about this on air.
Yeah, there's several we work with up there. Just good examples. Some of them are popular, like Aurora or Sun Farms. Tilray we've worked with. It's just some of these companies that really are growing to scale. And that's one of the ones I was going to talk about today, actually, Aurora Cannabis, and then securing medical pot approval for production in Ireland. It's a good example of the company we've discussed that it has been a little bit of a challenge the last, let's call it, 4 or 5, maybe 6 months. It's been a little challenge on both Wall Street and up there in Toronto as far as the exchange goes. But a lot of these businesses, they've got phenomenal plans, and they're using the right products. They're partnering with the right companies to be successful and really make sure they stay focused on their long-term goals. So it's really nice to see everything come together.
Yeah, I saw that Aurora secured, I think, $80 million or something? Or is that Afria?
This is actually Aurora. That is the one that secured the pot approval or cannabis approval in Ireland, if you will. And this is kind of an interesting one because, legalization has been moving forward over in Europe. It's definitely been moving a little bit quicker in some countries than others. For example, England has been a little slow, although Parliament over a year ago said that they're going to launch a medical program. Meanwhile, Ireland and France both have just been full steam ahead. So to hear that Aurora and their international team has gotten this bid for working with the medical program in Ireland, I think it's huge. I mean, this is a good example of just how big things can be for some of these companies as far as potential.
I'll tell you, I've been to Ireland many times. They could use some pot over there to chill out in Temple Bar at 3 a.m. after all the pints they've had. And I'm being serious about that, too.
Oh, man, Temple Bar. You know it. Funny story on Temple Bar, too. You know, that was all going to be ripped down and made it into a major bus depot for downtown Dublin. And they let the artists move in and a few clubs move in, a few pubs moved in the interim while the government was getting their plans together. And then all of a sudden, Temple Bar just became a thing. And it's like the most hipster. It is. If anyone that's been to Dublin, they know that you have to go to the Temple Bar. You also maybe have to stop by the Storehouse and check out, you know, where it all began for a certain Guinness beer. But man, that is funny you mentioned it. Yeah, Temple Bar, you're right. It does get a little rowdy, and that goes back to alcohol versus cannabis.
Okay. So, hey, Michigan was pretty impressive recently. Crowds of people lined up for the first day of legal cannabis sales.
Yeah, man, it happened on my birthday. So this was December 1st was the first official day of legal.
Oh, happy birthday, dude.
Michigan.
Wait a second. Bilal, where's the stripograms here for Lance? What happened?
I was unaware.
Yeah, I'm sure you're just saving it for Vegas.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh,
okay.
man.
Oh, we'll make it up to you.
All good. So, yeah, it was kind of exciting. You know, Michigan, those of us in the industry, we've been anticipating this state to come online for some time. So it was really cool to see it come into fruition. You know, they had a bit of their challenges, as most emerging markets do. But for everything to kick off on December 1st, they did it was $221,000 in sales in their first day. Not too shabby, obviously, if you extrapolate that out, you know, and amortize it, they're going to be doing pretty well. Definitely in the millions, comparable market to Colorado, say, or Washington. So definitely good to see another domestic market move forward with legalization.
I don't even know. How many people are in the state of Michigan?
Michigan is actually a pretty large. It's interesting because a lot of people don't realize that Michigan, although it is inland, it actually has a decent population because of what I consider it being a keystone state. So you've got 9.96 million people, at least as of the 2018 census, if I recall. You have almost 10 million people in the state of Michigan. But you think about what it's surrounded with. I mean, besides obviously our friends to the north, yourself included. You do have Illinois, you have Chicago right around the corner, you have Cleveland, Ohio right around the corner. So you do have other major metros nearby, but Michigan in itself, it definitely boasts quite a large population based on square mileage, I guess you would say.
That really is amazing when you think about it. I would have maybe guessed 5-6 million because, you know, just basing off the entire Canadian population. So that is really significant when you think of an entire state as legalized cannabis, and that's 1/3 the size of Canada. I mean, it's really its own. Yeah. If we start to look where Canada is and what the hype was for Canada and the stock market craze and everything, you know, here we are with a state just to, like you said, just beside us that's got 1/10 the size. Or one third the size.
1/3 the size is right. I mean, or even just a little bit more than that. And to your point, even comparing to existing legal markets where Colorado, you're sitting about 6.5 million. California, obviously, is the outlier. We're just under 40 million. But the other legal states, most of them are considerably smaller. So if you look at the grand scheme of things, Michigan, by per capita as far as population, is the second largest to California for legalization. So it is something that, again, we expected quite a bit of an impact. But the same thing with Florida. If they'd get through the politics and some of the drama down there, Florida is another market that's finally kind of coming around, has such huge potential just based on population overall. So.
And tell me about the Indian state. I want to make sure I say it correctly, but why don't you get into it, Lance?
Yeah, so I think the other thing that we were going to talk about was the Madhya Pradesh, which is a state within India. And a lot of people don't know that when it comes to cannabis, technically it is acceptable in India based on religion. So they have something called Bhang, which is a consumable iteration of cannabis. And it's something that's been in their culture for centuries. So it's not as much a stigma or have as much tabooism associated with it, kind of similar to Africa, where it's kind of just looked at a different way than we look at it in North America or Europe. But this is the second largest state in India, and so it's pretty pivotal for the second largest state to legalize cultivation out there. And it's a 119,000 square mile state. So right in the center of India, there's 75 million people, talking about population, because as you probably know, India as a whole is over 1 billion. So 75 million of those people alone live in this one state. So again, it's going to be quite a change as far as movement with the industry. We aren't too sure how much they're going to export and keep domestic, but those are some of the things that they're working through right now. And again, it's just one step at a time.
Yeah, I mean, a huge step. I asked another one of our guests this question yesterday on yesterday's show, Kieran Sidhu from Halo Labs, and we work very closely together now. And I said, Kieran, in what year, if you were a visionary, do you see cannabis legal in every single country on this planet? I'm going to ask you that now, Lance Lambert. Lance Lambert.
Wow.
If you were to take a guess.
Gosh. I would have to say I could see it coming into fruition by 2027. I would love for it to be sooner, but there's a few global organizations, specifically out of Europe, that are a bit reserved and conservative. And so I think that's the one thing that's going to kind of handicap things. But again, seeing things like this in India where, again, cannabis has been used medicinally and spiritually for centuries upon centuries. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years that it's been a part of that culture. And then places like Africa, and then places like Asia, specifically Thailand and South Korea, that have come online. I could see it maybe happening sooner. It's just there's still this very conservative pull that you have people like UNODC and the WHO tied to that is going to kind of keep things from moving quicker than we'd like.
Lance Lambert's with us, bovedainc.com. So Kieran Sidhu said 2031.
Oh, okay.
And you're saying 2027. What would be the last country that would legalize it?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I would imagine it's
tricky.
what's the Asian country that has very, very strict laws right now around
Saudi Arabia?
Singapore. Yeah, Singapore and Saudi Arabia.
Singapore.
I would agree, Bilal. Yeah, I think the Emirate Empire. I mean, there's some very, very harsh. I think we talked about this before, and it's a little morbid, but I think it was over a quarter of the beheadings that took place in Saudi Arabia were tied to drug trafficking, specifically hashish, hash, obviously concentrate. But also Singapore, it is capital punishment. If you have enough with intent for distribution, which does not take much, essentially anything over an ounce, if memory serves, that warrants capital punishment in that city-state. It is beautiful, and as much as I love Singapore, great place to visit, with that cleanliness and with that organization and that structure obviously comes a conservative outlook on certain things. And unfortunately, cannabis, albeit a natural plant, is kind of, grouped under illicit drugs for them. So I'd agree with Bilal. It'd be a tie between Singapore and Saudi Arabia in my mind, unfortunately.
And I mean, at some point, if all the countries on the planet are doing it, you think someone would say, hey, give your head a shake here.
Yeah. When does it become the whole, from alpha beta, right? So you have the alphas, Uruguay, huge props for them doing it. To your point, Canada got an exuberant amount of attention because, hey, you guys, you're a first world country. You're part of the G7, which is a substantial, element as well. And then the fact that you do have quite an infrastructure, both governmentally, politically, but as well as financially. So it was a big deal for Canada. But again, when does it get to that pivotal point to where other countries are like, don't leave us behind? Because to your point, they're looking at how much opportunity from a revenue standpoint exists with legalizing cannabis, rather be again on a medical or an all-out adult use level. And I think that's what some countries are factoring. I know that was a big factor for Italy. I know that it was a slight factor for Portugal. So I think that will continue in the trend of what's in it for us and, is it financially beneficial for the country? Because at the end of the day, countries are businesses too, right? I mean, everything's a business and everyone has a balance sheet. So I think that's going to be a factor on how quickly or slowly it moves.
And as we talk about this, I just got an email that came in that said actually in India, consumption of alcohol is prohibited in a few states there. So alcohol. So while we're seeing some lax laws with cannabis, I mean, isn't it interesting to know that I guess now we can't say all. I don't know if alcohol is actually banned entirely in any country in the world. Do you?
Not that I'm aware of offhand. No, I'm kind of surprised that it's not, but I think that's again the signs of the influence of a Western civilization, right? There's such a heavy influence in alcohol. And I don't know if we talked about this before, but, I didn't consume much alcohol before. I cut it out altogether this year. When you take a step back from alcohol being an element in your life, no matter what level, again, if it's social or otherwise, and you travel internationally, you really start to understand just how popular alcohol is. I mean, there is not a single country, including places like Singapore and Tel Aviv, Israel, that I haven't been where alcohol hasn't been a part of the social environment there. And it's kind of surprising because you do the homework and again, it's good. Everything's good. Everything's okay in moderation. But look at just how much alcohol has changed lives of many people over the centuries, so kind of.
Listen, I remember even a story that Red Bull was banned, I think, in France until like 2008 or something. So, with all these different types of, let's be honest, they're all a different type of high. They all sort of have an effect on the human body that give you some sort of rush or some kind of obviously psychoactive ingredient or some sort of even depressant, some would say. And yet, so there's careful compliance that goes into all this, but I think cannabis is being proven to say, hey, listen, with education and moderation, no one's going out there and, beating each other up at the bar after.
That's the running joke, and it's so true, though, right? I mean, it's funny because there's some seriousness and cynicism, and that's what I feel with people talking about that. Everyone jokes around about being on the couch, couch lock or laid back, or last thing you see is two stoners fighting, all these kind. But you know what? There's a truth to that, and you're right. I mean, alcohol technically is a stimulant to a point, then it's a depressant. Cannabis is a stimulant. Other, obviously, illicit and legal drugs are stimulants, but all in how people act. And to your point, very seldom do you hear a person was, under the influence of cannabis when they robbed a bank, when they assaulted someone, when they, took someone out with their vehicle. I mean, all these things are so much more commonly associated, unfortunately, with alcohol. And so, everyone has their own opinion, but again, interesting to see what the future holds post-prohibition, specifically for this plant.
Lance, in a few minutes that we have left here, what can we expect to see in MJ Biz as we broadcast live from the Boveda booth for Wednesday and Thursday's show?
Man, it is going to be great. We're going to have all kinds of folks out there at the show. We've talked about this before. Obviously a lot of investors, a lot of new individuals to the industry. So I expect to see a lot of traffic coming from the Midwest and the eastern states of the U.S. Also, we will see a considerable amount of influx from the international side for the first time. I have a lot of friends in the international space that made a point to put this on the list, although it was backing right up to CannaFest and a few other international events. So we're going to see a lot of that. You'll see a lot of ancillary products. So you'll see a lot of components that help with either cultivating, harvesting, processing, or retail sales of cannabis. So that's the exciting side. And some celebrities, every industry has its celebrities, but we've got, and Jim Belushi will be hanging out. You have the D'Angelo brothers, phenomenal friends and activists that'll be there. We'll see all kinds of people, and we'll have a bird's eye view from the booth up there on the second floor. So I think it'll be really neat to kind of walk it with you.
No, I can't wait, Lance. Really looking forward to it, and that's happening on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And that'll be from between 4 and 6 p.m. now, 1 and 3 p.m. on Vegas and Pacific time. Can't wait, man. It's all good. It's all happening. It's flown by. You're right. We planned this months ago, and here it is. Anything you need off air, let's make sure to be in touch, and look forward to seeing you in Vegas next week.
Definitely. Likewise, my friend. We look forward to having you into our beautiful country in Nevada.
Thank you all. I look forward to getting out of the cold. Trust me. Thank you, Lance. Okay.
Thanks. All
right, Lance Lambert, everyone.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.